Seriously, we've got the Democratic Party self-destructing in front of our very eyes, and now they're just bringing chaos to otherwise orderly Congress proceedings. Just recently, Republican Congressman Keith Self, he stood up for himself when Democrat Bill Keating tried correcting him when he referred to trans Representative Sarah McBride as Mr. McBride. Keating tried to be a knight in shining armor and gave him an ultimatum, but Self, he met the moment and he brought the hearing to a crashing halt. I mean, something as simple as calling a trans Mr. is bringing Congress committee hearings to a halt. Talk about a storm in a teacup, huh? In fact, President Trump has even gotten into the habit of mocking Democrats for their ongoing support for trans athletes in women's and girls sports. He even suggested that he hopes the party continues pushing for it so that they can run on the issue in future elections. Now, like Trump said, who would want these things? Everything is transgender. Everybody transgender. That's all you hear. That's why we won the election in record numbers. Heck, even California Governor Gavin Newsom, who's as liberal as they come, he did a complete 180 on transgender athletes in women's sports. A lot are saying because he's gearing up for a presidential run. But hey, I don't know. It still shows which way the wind is blowing, right? You know what I mean? In fact, a New York Times Ipsos survey found that a majority of Democrats believe that transgender athletes should not be allowed to compete with women. Really, it's not even an argument at this point. And speaking of arguments, we've got a lot to talk about what happened in a CNN panel recently. Republican strategist Scott Jennings catching the Democratic panel members by surprise when he said President Donald Trump should double down on supporting Tesla after his car purchase at the White House. Now, as Scott Jennings pointed out, let's support American companies that have thousands of American workers and thousands more workers who make indirect products for it. I mean, it makes sense, right? Just like what most of President Trump has been doing and saying all along. I'm just glad that more and more people, especially Republicans, are not afraid to speak the truth anymore. Hey, by the way, guys, if you're one of the real ones who really enjoy what we do here on the channel, you've got to check out the Inner Circle. This is where our true supporters get exclusive access to content that I just can't share here, completely commercial free. It's also the best way to keep this channel going strong. So if you want to be a part of something special, join us over there. Links in the description or in the pinned comment down below. Again, I really appreciate how President Trump is not always on vacation and unavailable like previous president, right? It's like 95% of the time we see him and we see what he's doing for our country. Every day, this man's out there getting things done. I mean, that kind of transparency and commitment is what we all voted for, right? He also mentioned this trans athlete issue more recently during a White House meeting with NATO leader Mark Rutte. He said 95% of Americans oppose it and to bring it up a week before the election. That way, according to Trump, we can't lose. I mean, who would in their right mind support this, right? Like the president said, they're hurting women and they're also demeaning women. Heck, even Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom reversed his position on transgender athletes in women's sports. Here, watch this.
Well, well, well. It looks like someone is thirsty for a presidential run. California Governor Gavin Newsom is breaking with the left-wing lunatics in his party, making common sense on men playing in women's sports while chatting with Charlie Kirk on his new podcast.
You right now should come out and be like, you know what? The young man who's about to win the state championship in the long jump in female sports, right. that shouldn't happen. You as the governor should step out and say no.
No, and I appreciate.
But like, would you do something like that? Would you say no men in female sports?
Well, I think it's an issue of fairness. I completely agree with you on that. So that's easy to call out, the unfairness of that.
Wow. Okay, Jesse, what is behind Gavin Newsom's sudden shift on his opinion regarding men and women's sports?
It has nothing to do with running for president. I'm sure of it, Judge. I went to school with this kid. He was a huge UNLV fan, wore a hat every single day. Remember running Rebels? Oh, yeah. 1991, undefeated. They get to the championship game. That's right, Larry Johnson. And Duke beats them. Next day, kid comes in with a Duke hat. It was so blatantly obvious this guy's a front runner, and you get a little whiff of that from Newsom. Like, he's obviously trying to pivot here, but it doesn't have to be this blatant. But I have to say something.
Yes.
I like him.
Of course, Gavin Newsom got what was coming to him thanks to this reversal. Democratic strategist and former Hillary Clinton spokesperson Karen Finney called it an obvious gimmick. Also, the thirstiness is dripping off of him, and it's like, like, just stop it. It's gross. Sure enough, since the release of Governor Gavin Newsom's episode, some of his fellow party members have criticized the governor's statement, with the California Legislative LGBTQ Caucus releasing a joint statement from Assemblymember Chris Ward and Senator Carolyn Measure saying that they were profoundly sickened and frustrated by the remarks. I mean, there's a lot of data that at least the majority of Americans, including most Democrats, oppose trans inclusion in women's sports. A New York Times Ipsos survey found that the vast majority of Americans, including a majority of Democrats, don't think transgender athletes should be permitted to compete in women's sports. 79% of participants said that the biological males who identify as women should not be allowed in women's sports. Of the participants who identified as Democrats, 67% said that transgender athletes should not be allowed to compete with women. A Gallup poll last year discovered the same thing. Nearly 70% of Americans said that biological men should not be permitted to compete in women's sports. And Trump was onto something when he said to make this an election issue. A national exit poll conducted by Concerned Women for America Legislative Action Committee found that 70% of moderate voters saw the issue of Donald Trump's opposition to transgender boys and men playing girls in women's sports, and of transgender boys and men using girls in women's bathrooms as an important issue. Now, if you guys remember, Trump even had a campaign ad saying Kamala is for they, them, Trump is for you. So yeah, Republicans, Democrats, moderates, it looks like nobody wants this and nobody knows it better than Trump. I don't want it, I'll tell you that. It's right up there with the latest support for Tesla in front of the White House. Republican strategist Scott Jennings said it was a smart move and it showed that the president was in support of American companies. Here, watch how he turned the tables on the CNN commentator who was trying to box him into a corner over it. Watch.
He promised all of these things and he hasn't done it. And instead, which I think was a terrible PR move, and Scott, I'm assuming you agree, because as a Republican strategist, you wouldn't have advised him to go in front of the White House and drive a Tesla.
Wait, why?
Because
of course I would have. You know why? Because if I were advising a Republican president, I would say, let's support American companies that have thousands of American workers and thousands more workers who make indirect products for it. Yeah, I think it would be a good idea if American companies did well under my administration.
Okay, so you're going to go ahead and support a billionaire, but not support the American worker, and not necessarily.
Who do you think makes Teslas, Sochi? American workers. It's good if
but it's
Tesla
very
does
much
well,
as
American
Jana mentioned.
You think Elon builds them all in his basement? They got factories all over the place,
including in China. But you know,
yeah. Do they not have thousands of Americans?
No, of course they do. The visual of him driving a six-figure...
Did Joe Biden drive a Jeep Rubicon around the South Lawn?
Okay, a six-figure car
Where do they make those?
Is owned by a billionaire in the White House.
Is giving billions
the UAW had a stake in it, and the UAW gave money to Joe Biden, and they supported Joe Biden. You're saying one hand.
Well, you're talking about the UAW. You're kind of making a point about the workers.
A billionaire who is in the federal government making cuts and making business deals that end up benefiting himself.
Well, a lot of those
it's a miracle look for Donald Trump.
Democrats so excited to tear down an American company or companies the way they are right now. It's crazy.
So yeah, they made it a terrible PR move. Elon Musk called it support for American companies that have thousands of American workers and thousands more workers who make indirect products for it. He also pointed out how he's never seen Democrats so excited to tear down an American company or companies the way that they are right now. Jennings said it's crazy. I mean, crazy pretty much sums up what Democrats have been doing lately. You know what I mean, guys? Drop a quick yes or no in the comments. Let me know what your thoughts are on this one. More commentary like this in our recommended videos as well. As always, thanks for hitting the like button and subscribing. We'll see you next time. Case in point, we got Republican Representative Keith Self from Texas, chair of the House Foreign Affairs Europe Committee, referring to Representative Sarah McBride as Mr. McBride. Congressman Bill Keating tried pushing back, but Self wasn't having any of it. Here, watch this.
I now recognize the representative from Delaware, Mr. McBride.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ranking Member Keating, also wonderful.
Mr. Chairman, could you repeat your introduction again, please?
Yes, we have set the standard on the floor of the House, and I'm simply...
What is that standard, Mr. Chairman? Would you repeat what you just said when you introduced a duly elected representative from the United States of America? Please.
I will. The representative from Delaware, Mr. McBride.
Mr. Chairman, you are out of order. Mr. Chairman, have you no decency? I mean, I've come to know you a little bit, but this is not decent.
We will continue this.
You will not continue it with me unless you introduce a duly elected representative the right way.
This hearing is adjourned.
Yeah, again, a pretty strong example of common sense prevailing in politics today. Some would even argue that Keating was doing McBride a disservice for speaking for him. And to stop official Congress proceedings over this is what a clown show this is, right? Like Self said, the House has made itself clear where it stands on the issue. President Trump too. Yeah, absolutely bonkers, guys. And you know what's even crazier? This happened right after Representative McBride himself claimed that it's Republicans who are obsessed with culture wars. Here, watch this.
They are obsessed with culture war issues. The Republican Party is obsessed with culture war issues. It is weird and it is bizarre. And the American people deserve serious legislators, serious elected officials who are focused on bringing people together to deliver real results for the American people, not to play games and not to engage in schoolyard taunts.
Really? I mean, you could really just kind of cut the irony with a butter knife. But yeah, let me just say this now. Congressman Self was just telling the truth. It's as simple as that. I mean, personally, it would be okay if, for example, you met a trans person at a party or maybe a ball game. Sure, you can work around with the pronouns and not be a jerk about it. But see, a congressional hearing is not a private event. It's the official public speech of our government. There's no two ways about it. It should reflect objective reality. In other words, Self did exactly the right thing to do in that official situation. The delusion stops there. I mean, okay, let's acknowledge that there are people who wish to live as the gender that they were not born as. At the same time, lawmakers have been pursuing public policies that protect women. But what we're realizing now is that it just doesn't work because it's actually the idea that they can change their gender like it's actually like the root cause of all of these problems regarding women's sports or women-only spaces such as prisons, shelters, and restrooms. Tell me if I'm making sense here, guys, because they're so fond of saying that it should be okay as long as we're not hurting anyone. Well, newsflash, they are hurting people. You've got news almost every other week of girls quitting sports because of a trans athlete ruining it for them, or worse, they've incapacitated them to some point where they can't even play the sport anymore. You guys remember the story of the trans volleyball player that smashed a girl's face so hard that it ended her career, right? Yeah, just one of the many examples that this is hurting people already. And it's not just that, because see, believing that everyone can just up and choose their own gender, it might seem good, but it can actually harm a lot of people, especially impressionable kids and young adults who are all too ready to believe that you can have this godlike power to completely change nature. Take, for example, independent woman ambassador Prisha Mosley, who was in attendance for Detransitioners Awareness Day. At just 16, Prisha, who seemed sure she was really a boy, had a double mastectomy, which she now regrets, but now cannot undo. Like she told Fox News, it's because of adults in the room who entertained the lie that she was born in the wrong body and needed to transition that she now suffers from irreversible damage to her body. And this is coming from someone who truly regretted transitioning as a minor. The truth is not transphobic. It's never loving to lie. And really, they're lying for what exactly? To be polite? To allow this bonkers idea that people can just switch their genders? Hey, by the way, guys, if you're one of the real ones who really enjoy what we do here on the channel, you've got to check out the Inner Circle. This is where our true supporters get exclusive access to content that I just can't share here, completely commercial free. It's also the best way to keep this channel going strong. So if you want to be a part of something special, join us over there. Links in the description or in the pinned comment down below. Now, at this point, guys, we have to speak the truth. It's not a matter of opinion. It has never been a matter of opinion, and it never will be a matter of opinion. I mean, people are even scared to bring it up in a private conversation, but we have to start because people are getting hurt by this. I mean, sure, we have to be ready to be called transphobes and bigots at this point, but these conversations need to be started because we've got to protect minors like Prisha Mosley, and we just cannot accept the lies anymore because that just makes us complicit. Right now, there are young men and women thinking about transitioning, ready to go through irreversible surgeries or risk their ability to have children, all to try to become something that they fundamentally cannot do. For their sake, we need to stop pretending and we need to get back to solid ground. Get back to biological reality. Drop a quick yes in the comments, guys. Hit the like button if you guys agree. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Really appreciate you guys' support. But here's President Trump talking about trans athletes in girls' sports. Watch.
It would be great if the Democrats would do what's right for our country for a change, because they really are there. They've lost their way. They've lost their way. They think that people pouring into our country from prisons, jails, murders. We have 11,088 murderers that were allowed into, people that murdered people, half of which murdered more than one person in our country. We're getting them the hell out. But who would who would allow this to happen? Who would allow men to play in women's sports? And they're still fighting it. It's got to be a 95% issue. But they're on television this morning. I see this person, a Democrat, say, we should have the right. No, men should not be, they're hurting women. They're hurting women very badly. They're hurting women. And they should not, and they're also demeaning women. But who would want these things? And everything's transgender. Everybody transgender. That's all you hear about. Now, that's why we won the election in record numbers. But
now,